I, Prince of Neverhere, shall place this sword onto the royal table. May it be a symbol of hope and peace for the people in our kingdom. For those who seek to destroy its power, shall they meet a bitter end. No, that's not how it goes. A freakishly cartoonish character and his dog companion sidekick kick down the dungeon door. They break the prince's spell. They capture the golden sword of battle. They place it into their treasure, and then they rescue the candy princess. Yeah, right, as if a couple of dudes are gonna save a princess made out of candy. Wait a minute, you guys. You got the story all wrong. Our heroes are actually superpowered beings from another planet. Their parents had to abandon them because their planet was dying, so they sent them here to Earth. To protect the kingdom, of course, to earn the princess's love, and to adopt a completely different identity and integrate into society like every other single human on this planet and not be noticed as some awesome being with awesome superpowers. What? Okay. Wait a minute, you guys. You clearly haven't ever told a good story before, have you? We all know a good story begins with once upon a time.
Was a sombre, moonless night. The air was grimy, and the sound of nocturnal wildlife outside emanated throughout the homestead. In a shadowy corner, in a dimly lit room, a figure obscured the flickering flames of the fireplace as they were licking it dry. The solitary figure, illuminated by the fire's gaze, seemed to be occupied. Forked shadows from the trees outside splintered the room, causing a network of shadows to be spread against the wall. As I approached closer and closer, I realized the man was actually
filming a review for a game called Once Upon a Time. Hi there, my name's Danny. Once Upon a Time is a competitive storytelling game where players compete against each other to tell a very rich narrative and try and skewer the narrative towards their happy ending. Once Upon a Time, the 3rd edition, is a game designed by Richard Lambert, Andrew Rilestone and James Wallis. Each game takes up from 20 to 40 minutes and it plays from 2 to 6 players. The aim of the game is to get rid of all of your story cards and finally playing your ending card, whilst at the same time telling an interesting and rich narrative to your group. Shuffle the cards and place into 2 separate decks, the story card deck and the ending deck. Secretly deal each player an ending card. Deal each player a story card equal to the number 11 minus the number of players. So for example, if it's a 2-player game, you'll deal each player 9 cards. Then select a player to begin the story as the storyteller, who begins spinning a narrative that relates to the cards in their hand. Remember, a player needs to remove all of the story cards in their hand before they can play their final ending card. The story cards are divided into 5 different categories: character, thing, event, place, and aspect. They're denoted by the icons given in the top left-hand corner and by the coloured banners right underneath it. Ending cards look like this. Each player only has 1 ending card at a time. There are several interrupt cards that can be played during the game. They usually have the word interrupt written at the bottom, and it usually is specified when and where that card can be used. For example, if a player plays a thing card and you have the interrupt card, you can play this card to take over the story. As the storyteller tells the story and mentions various elements in their story that matches a card in their hand, they place it down in front of them. For example, the king lured the prince into a trap, so I would play the trap card.
As the story is played out, the cards are placed sequentially in the middle of the table so everyone can see, and this helps with remembering what happened previously in the story. There are two ways that the other players can interrupt the storyteller. If another player has an interrupt card that matches the story category of the card that was just placed down by the storyteller, then that person takes over the story. For example, if the witch card was placed down by the storyteller, and I was the interrupter and I played this card here, because the card categories match, I can take over the story. Another player can also interrupt the story if the storyteller mentions a word or phrase that is similar to a card that they have in their hand. For example, the storyteller might say, "The prince was locked up." And in this case, that has similar meaning to this word here, imprisoned, so I would be able to interrupt the story by using this card. Once interrupted, the interrupter then continues the same story until another player interrupts them. It is important for the other players to listen to the storyteller carefully for their moment to be able to interrupt the story and take over. There are some strict storytelling rules that go along with this game. A storyteller's turn ends if they start rambling on too long, they can't come up with the next part of the story, their story is convoluted and contradicts the events that happened prior to the story moment, it simply just doesn't make sense, or they're playing cards that aren't important to the story itself. In any case, the storyteller ends their turn, picks up a card, and then the next person becomes the storyteller. The other players in the group can challenge the storyteller. If a player attempts to play their ending card but fails, they discard their existing one and then draw a new ending card.
What I really admire about this game is that it provides for a very rich storytelling experience. It fosters creativity and imagination in the players that are participating, and also is a great opportunity for budding authors and writers and RPG gamers out there who really love the story aspect of gaming to come together and focus on telling a fantastically interwoven narrative with lots of plots and twists. It really provides opportunity for exploring different narrative structures and also exploring character development. So your first game could be about a particular character, and then your second and third game you can take that same character and develop that character over time using the same cards and the same scenarios. There are quite a few limitations to this game, but they're more precautionary rather than negatives. First thing is, you need like-minded people to come together when you play this game, because if you play the game with people who are not invested in telling a rich narrative experience, then you'll find that the stories you tell will fall flat, and the stories that come out will be very, very underwhelming. So there's a little bit of a wink out there to those Dungeons and Dragons players out there. The second thing is that the artwork is very distracting. The artwork skewers the storytellers to tell a fairy tale based story, whereas when you strip the artwork back, you could actually tell a story that's set in space or set in an alternative timeline. What else is also limiting is the ending cards. They're very, very generic, very predictable, and also very, very skewed heavily to the fairy tale theme as well. Now, when you're playing for the first time, you need to have a certain level of confidence when you come into the game, because if you're playing this with a brand new group of people, it can actually be quite daunting to be the storyteller. There's a lot of pressure on you to tell a good story and intertwine everyone else's characters and plot elements. So it's best to start this game with people that you're familiar with, people that you're comfortable with, people that are not going to judge you. So starting it as a two-player game is probably the best way to start, and then maybe branching out and adding people as you go along. The last thing that I'm going to mention that's a limitation is that some of the judging rules for this particular game in terms of what is a good story element and what isn't can be a little bit ambiguous. So implementing some clear rules about when to interrupt someone based on their storytelling ideas or experience is quite important, because that can actually diminish and interrupt the flow of the game if people are constantly questioning you about your story ideas. So something that I'd like to highlight about the potential use of this game in an educational setting. In the rulebook, it specifies how this game could be used to help lift the language and ideas that ESL students bring to our schools. So in this context, that makes this game such a valuable resource, especially for teachers. One of the things that this game is quite good at doing is inspiring kids and providing them with ideas for characters and stories and getting over that writer's block syndrome. The other thing is, if you've got any students who are interested in becoming an author or writer one day, this is a great place to start in terms of getting a game and inspiring them and creating stories and characters that continue. There's this really great companion book that goes with the board game that you have to purchase separately, but it provides you with some excellent ideas about great ways to write a story using the cards and the schema inside the book, and how to structure and plan an effective story and getting it to the publishing stage. This is actually quite a valuable resource, not only for teachers, but for any parents who want to inspire their kids to develop and improve their writing. What I'd like to do is share an amazing gaming experience with you. And I'm going to do this because it was such a memorable moment that this is an example of how this game can actually really soar when played in the right circumstances. Now, in our group, what we did was we placed different genres into a hat, and then we pulled out one of the genres. So the genre could be sci-fi or action or romance or horror. And that genre would be the genre that the story would have to be based about. So then what we did was each person got a blank piece of paper, wrote down all the 5 categories that are in the Once Upon a Time game, and wrote down 3 words that would fit under each category that would fit in that genre. Then we each wrote 2 endings that would fit in that genre, cut them up, placed them in 2 piles, and started the game. The storytelling experience that came out was amazing. Not only was it personalized, people were very confident because they knew some of the ideas that they had come up with during the planning phase. It was interesting to see how other people took your idea or your character and sent them on a very unexpected quest. So that made for such a great storytelling experience because everyone felt like they had ownership over the game. So the Once Upon a Time storytelling card game is not just limited by the cards that are here in front of us. It actually has a little expansion pack where you actually get to personalize and write your own cards. So they give you a blank set of cards that you can actually create yourself. In considering my final verdict, Once Upon a Time is more than just a simple fable. It's more of a complex storytelling game where it puts the ownership into the minds of the players and their imaginations. What it is limited by are the words and the artwork, but with the right and like-minded people, this game can be a very fun experience. Now, if you'd like to see my verdicts in greater detail, you can check my table out after the end of this video. Otherwise, this is Danny. Thank you for joining me again on another episode of Board Game Sanctuary, and I'll see you again next time.